Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Rev. And I
After
hope
a
everyone
wonderful
had,
Father's Day. Beautiful day yesterday for
yep,
Father's
I hope
Day.
everyone, all the fathers had a good Father's Day. I know it's not as popular as Mother's Day, but I know you had a good Father's Day, as did I, and I hope everybody did and enjoyed their day of recognition, supposedly. So,
Well, I'll tell you, I had a like a 4 day spread of Father's Day with my daughter, and she took me out to dinner several times. We did a couple of things we hadn't done in a long time, and then she went to Fenway Park for a business trip. I love her business. They go to Fenway Park. She was so thrilled with Fenway Park. She didn't
ah,
realize she didn't realize how old it was. And she said, "Do you realize that they still have a manual scoreboard?" I said, "Yes, I do. It's called the Green Monster."
yeah. Well, hey, like I said, I went out to dinner and stuff, and I've actually got another one today. I got a clam boil too. I got my clam boil, but I ate so much yesterday I had to save it for today. So, but yeah, we had quite the issues going here about. I'm going to talk about propaganda and suppression of information. This morning, I actually heard on we we suck at radio. They had somebody from the MBTA talking about them. Oh, they're going to test the trains at 35 or 4, and then 45 miles an hour, and then at top speed, which is 79 miles an hour, and they're going to do all this just in case, because they may be in use by next May. Notice the operative word, may.
May.
May, not they will be. They may be in use, but this is the kind of propaganda you get, and it segues me into the other propaganda that is like the lack of information. See, they give you a lot of like semi information, like, oh, we're testing the trains, and that's a great sign, and it may be used, just like it's already supposed to be here for already, but and they suppressed all the information about the financial troubles, but then we get into the crime issues and how they suppress the information, and we did talk about it at the last show, and I talked about the stats on how staggering that they don't report crime, they reclassify crime, and they manipulate it, especially in an election year when crime is a major issue. But you can't hide it. You can't hide it. And this morning it was disturbing. I was watching, as I always do, I watch news in the morning all the time, national and local. And nationally, there was another rape and murder in Maryland, the second one in that particular county. And it was an El Salvadorian illegal. And he's wanted for murder in El Salvador. He illegally came into this country a couple of years ago. They found his DNA at a home invasion in California the first year he was here. Then he did some other crime. They found his DNA. And now he's murdered a young girl, raped and murdered a young girl in Maryland. That's the second murder by an illegal. And it was in a small, fairly affluent town in Maryland, outside of Baltimore, a suburb of Baltimore. And he was apprehended in Oklahoma. I mean, these people just roaming all over the country, raping, murdering. We got the gangs from Venezuela, the gangs from El Salvador now taking over cities and crime, and nobody hears about it. Only on one station reports it, and all the rest just don't ignore. They just ignore it. And even in our own community, we know about the shootings on North Main Street. We know about bullets flying, but very rarely makes the news. And to show you how nutty this city is getting, I got a text from, we get texts from people. And I got a text from someone that said there is some effing lunatic running up and down North Main Street swearing and challenging everyone in cars to fight. Keeps going back and forth. He's obviously schizophrenic. Well, I'm not sure about that diagnosis, but I don't know. Unless you're a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist, maybe that. But there was definitely something wrong with them, and the guy's running up and down North Main Street. I mean, right near the Superior Courthouse where they had that shooting. I mean, this is what goes on in the city. Then I got another report last week, and I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I might have mentioned it, that Walsh's Pharmacy, which is on Rock Street near the old Durfee High School, and now it's the Resiliency School, one of our viewers who was a customer at Walsh's, which is a very good pharmacy, very personalized service there. It's still a privately owned pharmacy. I got a text that he had to wait in his car to go in to pick up his prescription because there was a gang fight outside on Rock Street in front of this thing, and it was 7 or 8 people fighting in front, and he was fundamentally didn't want to get out of the car. You never hear about this stuff. Paulie, the pathological prevaricator, we never hear about this stuff. Yeah, you're right. Boy, is that right. You're right. That's what they're going to fill them with, the illegals, because nobody's coming here. I mean, it's just, you're right. It's staggering. The stats are staggering. But what's staggering is the fact that how they don't tell people the truth. They not only don't tell them the truth, they suppress information. That's just unacceptable. Look, this guy we know is the worst mayor we've ever had for lack of transparency. Nobody even sees him. He's been in 5 years. How many press conferences has he had on anything? The lack of performance of the schools, the crime. No, what he says is, shut up. You don't have bullet holes in your house. It's not a big deal. Like I said in that stat, I still got the paperwork here. In New York City, they changed the definition so it's not considered a shooting unless somebody actually gets physically shot. So if you don't hit anybody, they don't classify it as shots fired. And as I said, you look at the FBI statistics, they differ from the New York City statistics by 44%. New York's actually reporting more within the city. And it's not coincidental that all the cities with the most crime, New York, LA, Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, all these communities that it's running rampant in. But, they're trying to tell everybody that, shut up. Everything's great. But like I said, it's a travesty. Another rape and a murder. And it just goes to show these people don't have to pay for their plane tickets. They don't have to pay for health care. They don't have to pay for anything while this country is falling apart. Nobody can afford housing. Nobody can afford. They're getting pushed out of their homes. And this is what this guy was. Home invasion in California, rape and murder in Maryland. Now they lock them up in Oklahoma. These people, we can't afford to travel anymore. And these people are all over. You go to the airport, they don't even have to they don't get frisked. They don't take their shoes off. Nothing happens to them in the airports. They just walk right through. They're not vetted. This guy wasn't vetted. He's got a warrant. He's got a warrant out for his arrest for murder in El Salvador, and he's been running around in the United States for 2 or 3 years. I mean, this is just crazy. And with that, CJ, back to you.
It's just interesting. And, let's look locally. There were several 50 grade police calls over the weekend, and a 50 grade potential gun or gun shooting. And there was one at Ruggles Park where they said shots were fired and a black vehicle left the scene. Then there was one on Ridge Street where they said it was domestic, where a gun was shown. It's not whether or not the shots are being fired. It's making the people feel safe. And this dictator, this, I don't know what to call him, fool, doesn't realize the people don't feel safe in his community. They don't feel safe here. This used to be our community. This used to be our neighborhood. This used to be our homes. Now it's being developed by Ken Fiola and his developers, not his constituents, his developers. Paul's not saying anything about his constituents. No, it took Senator Mark Montigny from New Bedford to say something about his constituents. That's just not acceptable. It's not acceptable at all. But this is what happens. This is what happens. This shows you don't elect people who represent you. You elect people who are fools. Because they're not going to represent you. They're going to represent their developers. Remember that. Remember that at the ballot box. Their developers. Not their constituents, their developers. I think that's key. I think that's something you need to make sure you remember. Because those who don't remember are destined to repeat it. And we've repeated it enough with our ballot box. We've seen it enough. We can't live it anymore. We can't. We can't bear it. We just can't. That's just the way it is.
No, you're right, CJ. But the thing that disturbs me is, like you said, they're elected to represent us, to work for a better community, and their focus is never on anything in the community except suppressing it and getting propaganda, because they worry more about people who they think may move here than the people who are living here. We look at this state, and then we look across the border. McKee just put in a new budget in Rhode Island, and he's got 170 or something. He's got a ton of money earmarked for affordable housing. A ton of money. What's Massachusetts do? They got a ton of money for housing that's going to go to illegals. And they never talk about their own community. And you said they don't know. They do, but they ignore it. That's their political position. Pretend it doesn't happen. Don't talk about it. And then the people won't really realize how bad it is. Well, we do realize. We've seen. Yeah, he does. You're right, and he doesn't give up that. Yeah. So the reality is that, we know how bad the schools are. Every year we give you the stats. We were 336th out of 351 cities and towns. We got a 53% graduation rate, with them lowering the standard of passing grade to 60. And as a former educator and a man I respect, and we don't agree on a lot of things, said he was outraged when he saw those stats and said, we must demand excellence of our students, not continue to war. We'll end up like Baltimore, graduating people from high school who are functional illiterates, people who are reading on the second grade, third grade, eighth grade level. I think the majority of them were reading at an eighth grade level and they were getting high school diplomas. And they're basically functional illiterates. And this guy's been involved, like I said, 9 years, 2 terms as a school committeeman, and now in his 3rd term as a ex officio chairman, as the mayor on the school committee involved in education, and 30 years in the educational system. Yes, no, you're going to tell me he doesn't know how bad the system is? Have they done a damn thing about it? No. I mean, the crime, like I said, people running up and down the street challenging people in cars to a fight. And who knows what he had in his pockets? I don't know. He could have had a gun. He could have had a knife. He could have had a machete. Who knows? But what the hell kind of city? Yeah, all the yuppies from Boston and Newton are going to come down here and come to a city where you got gang fights in front of the pharmacy when you go get your prescription. You got a guy running up and down North Main Street, attacking cars and challenging people in cars. Yeah, this, of course. If that happened in Newton, there would be like 25 police officers there. It would be on the news at night. But all they do is just pretend it's real. It's like, shut up, the border's closed, there's no inflation, everything is great. You people lying eyes, don't believe your pocketbook. 40% of the people in the United States now are skipping one meal in order to survive and eat. So that's a travesty. Our country is falling apart around our eyeballs. In this city, I'm telling you, I have never seen anything like this. I mean, at least the old politicians used to pretend they gave a shit. This guy just doesn't care. Kenny Fiola doesn't talk about the people of Fall River, except in a negative sense. My developers, I have people that want to move here. Never a consideration of the people who do live here and the plight that they're in. This is who you elected. Look at that council. There's only one person there who consistently fights for you. All the rest of them are elitists. Oh, I'm shocked. I'm embarrassed. They had homeless people in front. No, don't be embarrassed. Be embarrassed for yourselves. Don't be embarrassed for those 3 people who got up there and said, look, we're homeless, but we do have some dignity here. We're human beings. Kudos to them. They had enough courage to stand up and say, listen, in the old days when we suffered through the Depression, maybe that's what we need again. Everybody realized that it's not money that defines you. A wise man once told me, you don't have to have the best clothes in the world. You don't have to live in the fanciest house in the world. But soap doesn't cost a lot of money. You can have clean clothes. You can have dignity regardless. You don't need to be a rich elitist. And then we see what's happening with these movie stars who don't care about the country. They're globalists. But in this city, it's horrible. I've never seen anything like it. This guy is the most insensitive mayor I've ever seen. He doesn't give a damn. He lived in that academic bubble that the educational system is. And he's brought in that bubble. They don't care about anybody else. It's like, okay, we take care of our people and screw everybody else. Like I said, there wasn't even a comment. What do they say? Oh, we've already got enough public housing. Well, public housing. It's outrageous. These people have no moral compass. They have they have no consideration for who and what they got elected to do. They swore an oath to be representatives of the people who elected them, and the people who elected them are the last consideration that they have. And with that, CJ, back to you.
Well, and the thing about all this, you see Jeff talking about it here, and we've seen it before. Uh, Market rate housing is like the big key word. I made a comment on a new opinion to the editor that was written over the weekend when they said that market rate housing is not the be all end all, and that we need to look at other ways to generate housing and make sure that there's affordable housing. We need a mix. And I said very clearly, I said the problem is this state legislature. Listen to this, Alan. Listen to this, Carol. Listen to this, Paul. Listen to this, Mike Rodriguez. The state legislature, with consent of the governor, Maura Healey, listen, are generating tax breaks, such as the HDIP program, which does not benefit affordable housing. The developers are taking it. And then with the 3A rule, which is the MBTA housing regulation, we see them spreading here in Fall River. They want to spread the zone that was already created. They want to expand it, taking away your rights. And while the city engineer says, oh, this is good because if somebody wants to make a fourth floor apartment on the triple decker, they can do that without a variance. Who's going to do that? Who's going to do that? Maybe one person out of all of them, if they're lucky. If they're lucky. And remember, there's all kinds of regulation changes once you go to that fourth level. Once you stop putting on that construction, all of a sudden, you're going to need sprinklers, you're going to need alarm boxes, you're going to need all these other great things. You're probably going to need fire escapes. You're going to need them all. You're going to need them all. So it's a lot of money. You might as well buy a new house. But the 3A rule is not going to benefit the people of Fall River. As a matter of fact, it's already destroying our neighborhoods. It's destroying our city. The fabric of Fall River isn't there anymore. And I don't want to hear, you're being negative. No, you know who was negative? Ken Fiola was negative when he turned around and said, my developers. You know who's negative? Paul Coogan. When he doesn't say, my constituents. Paul Coogan, when he doesn't look out for the interests of the people, not the interests of the pocketbook. Those are people who are negative. And we need people to fight for the people. And we need the people to rise up and take back their city, take back their government, and take control because it's already out of control. And all we're seeing is more and more money being thrown away and spent foolishly by this administration. The dictator does what he wants, and you suck it up.
Well, listen, you got to realize one thing, CJ, that look, this is a con job of all con jobs. In the entire United States, everybody is talking about how high housing is becoming out of reach for the average citizens, for the majority of people. Nobody can afford it anymore. They're talking about how this kind of development is pushing the prices up. Listen, I'm not saying that market rate housing shouldn't exist. There is a place for market rate housing, and that place is in communities that want neighborhoods that cater to the more affluent. It's part of every city. Every city has a highlands. Every city has a more affluent area. But most cities are not Newton. Most cities are like Fall River. They have a very diverse population. They have people of all economic stratas. And each one of those levels of people need a place to live. And that's what these rich elitists forget. It's not something new. Remember the famous saying, let them eat cake. Let the starving eat cake. Marie Antoinette, they actually chopped their head off with a guillotine. So, maybe that could be a solution. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe we reinstitute the guillotine. But the reality is that what they're saying is absolute folly. It doesn't work. Yeah, it works in Hollywood. You want to go live near Julia Roberts and George Clooney, who can call the president directly and say, let my wife file charges because I give you millions and millions of dollars. This country is predominantly made up of average people. And they've been shit on forever. It's time for them to rise up. It took a few hundred years for the French Revolution to take place. It took a few hundred years for the American Revolution to take place, that we revolted against England. It's time for a new American Revolution where the average people rise up and say, listen, all you idiots are gone. We're going to elect people who care about us. These things they talk about are bullshit. Just like the tea. The tea's coming tomorrow. It's going to save everything. Oh, forget about the fact that everybody knows the tea's $400 billion in the hole. It's impossible to save it. It's a mess. They're asking for another $700 million just for this year's budget. The tea may come in May. May. And when it does, it'll be limited service. And when it does, you'll be paying more because the tea's broke. Recent article, they're on a financial precipice. They're ready to go over the cliff. Did they tell you that in Fall River? No, they come up with the big whitewash brush. Don't worry, everybody. The tea's coming. The check's in the mail. The promises are always there, but they're all lies. Look at it. Look at reality. Back in the 1800s, I told you what the rich guys said. They said, we own the country. We're not giving it up. We own all the congressmen. We own all the politicians. But that's okay. But remember, this community is a community. It's a blue-collar community. It's never been a community that caters to the degreed people like Newton. What has Newton got? 75% of the people in Newton, 3 out of every 4 people in Newton have a bachelor's degree or higher. They're well educated. They have very high paying jobs, and they created a very affluent community to house themselves. And that's fine. There's not a lot of poor people in Newton. Their poverty rate's virtually zilch, but nobody can live there either. You can't afford it. Just like there are neighborhoods. But Fall River's a blue-collar city. And we got a bunch of people that are going to try to convince you that they can change this into Newton. And the only way they can do that is by getting rid of everybody in this city, basically. 90% of the people in this city have to disappear. And that's what they want. And listen to what they say. Don't listen to the BS. Listen to the way they talk. Listen to what they say when they say, my developers, I got people that want to move here. Kenny, how about the people who already live here? Screw them. We got enough housing. We got enough public housing. No, public housing is for people who have extremely low income. Workforce housing has an area amount that you have to get that most people in Fall River don't qualify for. There's no affordable housing in Fall River to people who truly do need affordable housing, because you people continually pretend you don't know the definition of affordable housing, and you all do. And this is the problem. The problem is they don't care about you. Listen to what they say. When the mayor of this city tells the guy and looks down on him and says, shut up, you live in public housing. That's an insult. You don't like it? Oh, you want to get into this conversation? Go buy a house. Those are comments made by people who don't care about you. So forget about Paul's such a great guy. He loves everybody. He walks around. No, remember the Paul that jumped out of the car and attacked a woman who was trying to raise money for a dance club or something, or whatever the hell it was. Remember the Paul Coogan that's a dismissive asshole that says, shut up. Don't talk to me about bullet holes in houses. Do you have a bullet hole in your house? You don't. Shut up. Go away. This is what you got. And if you you got an opportunity, people, we need to have another revolution. They cut off Marie Antoinette's head with a guillotine when she said, let him eat cake. The Americans finally, remember, when did they colonize this country? Jamestown was what? 1614, 1615. And Plymouth was 1620. Those are the first two colonies. States. And we didn't have a revolution till 130 years later, 140 years later. It took us 140 years to get pissed off enough to get rid of England. Now it's taken us nearly 250 years. You should be pissed off enough to get rid of all our politicians. So with that, CJ, back to you.
Time is of the essence, people. Time is of the essence. And end this game, end this charade, as they say. We have the power. We have the authority. We have the ability to change our government. And as a matter of fact, the Constitution demands that you change your government. When the government fails to represent the people, it's time for the people to change that government. The people in Massachusetts asked via a ballot question to limit terms of elected officials. It passed. And then the whim of the League of Women Voters decided that they were going to challenge that because they wanted their people to stay in office for as long as they wanted. 50, 60 years maybe. And that's what happened. The courts ruled that it's not up to the people to decide whether or not to limit the terms of office. It is up to the legislature to set up their own terms of office, which is bullshit. But it's Fall River. It's Massachusetts, the most woke state of the union. So try that for a while. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye. Martin Hunter.